before we start the sparge, we want to go ahead and put the mash tun outflow tube into the boil kettle as far down in the boil kettle as possible to eliminate hot side aeration. We will then turn on the sparge arm, watching it sprinkle onto the top of the grain bed, at the same time opening the valve at the bottom of the mash tun. At the same time opening the outflow valve at the bottom of the mash tun. You can control the flow by leaving the valve slightly open or all the way open depending on your desires to avoid a stuck mash as well as quick transfer. Let me remind you, this is a 1/2 inch outflow versus the inflow is only 3/8 inch through the sparge arm. So you don't really want to have this valve all the way open. You want to match the inflow to keep the grain afloat in the mash tun so that the water can trickle through the grain bed and pick up all the sugars and end up in the mash tun, or the boil kettle for the boil. Now we're going to see the flow into the boil kettle. Look at that sweet wort. As you can see, the nylon hose or vinyl hose is submerged in the wort, preventing hot side aeration. We're about at the point where we can turn on the boil kettle burner, because we have sufficient wort in there to protect the kettle from being damaged from the burner. We also want to turn on the burner early so that we can start heating it up. It's a lot easier to heat up smaller amounts of wort than it is to heat up larger amounts of wort. As you can see, the dip tube that goes through the keg wall and into the wort chiller. Let's go ahead and turn on the burner below. We turn it on with our barbecue lighter. And we turn on the needle valve slowly and ignite. Now that we've turned the burner on by using our regular burner technique of lighting the burner, you can see the flame is good. You can adjust the flame with the needle control valve. Generally speaking, when you get to a clear flame, it's a good sign that you got the right heat setting. You'll want to save some sparge water for when you do the boil, because the thing is you will boil almost a full container. You don't really want to fill it all the way up to the top, because that will overflow. The boil kettle will overflow from the boiling process, the initial boil. Once you add the Irish moss, it will subside the foaming of the boil. That's a great help for that, and it also clarifies the beer greatly. Basically what you end up doing is boiling most of a 15-gallon batch. After an hour of boiling and adding the hops, you'll have boiled down to a lower volume, upon which shortly before you're done with the boil, you will go ahead and add more sparge water to the mash tun, open the valve again to allow more flow into the boil kettle to top it off, and do a final boil for the last few minutes to sterilize the wort. That way you get a full 15-gallon batch. And you can transfer it through the chiller and into your fermenter. If you use up all the hot liquor or hot water in the hot liquor tank, you may have to add some and turn on the burner to heat it up to the correct temperature for your additional sparging of the grain. Let's take another look at the sparging of the grain. Make sure we're doing it right. We want to keep the level of the mash bed the correct level. We want to keep the grain afloat. You want the liquid level in the mash tun to be slightly above the grain level. You never want it to drop below. If it drops below, you'll get a compacted mash, a stuck mash, channeling will occur, and you'll end up with a watery wort at much lower gravity than you expect to get. To get the best gravity, you're going to need to keep that grain afloat. You're going to want to make sure that the valve on the hot liquor tank control valve is fully open and then the valve on the mash tun outflow valve is partially open, matching the outflow to the boil kettle. If you want to completely match it, you can replace the 1/2 inch outflow hose bar on the mash tun to a 3/8 inch hose bar and a 3/8 inch hose. That'll match the inflow to the mash tun, which is a 3/8 inch connection.